At 31, I believed that success was measured by the number of promises you could keep. I worked long hours, answered every call, accepted every responsibility, and never said no. Friends admired my discipline. My co-workers respected my dedication. My family proudly told everyone that I was dependable. Yet there was one promise I kept breaking every single day. The promise I made to myself. Every morning I promised I would rest, more spend time with the people I loved and enjoy the life I had spent years building. Every evening I returned home too exhausted to do any of those things. One rainy Thursday, everything changed. It began with a letter, not an email, not a text message. An old-fashioned handwritten envelope was waiting outside my apartment door. There was no return address, only my name written in neat blue ink. Inside was a single sentence. Meet me at the old clock tower at sunrise if you want to know what you've been losing. There was no signature. At first I laughed. It looked like a prank. Still, something about the handwriting felt strangely familiar. Curiosity won. The next morning before dawn I drove to the abandoned clock tower on the edge of town. It had once been the pride of the city before modern. Buildings stole everyone's attention. The streets were silent. The air smelled of wet earth after the night's rain. As the first rays of sunlight touched the tower, I noticed an elderly man sitting on a wooden bench. He wore a grey coat and polished black shoes that looked decades old. Without looking at me, he said quietly, "You're late." "I came early." "For today," he replied with a smile, "but you've been late for years." His words irritated me. "Do I know you?" "No." "Then why am I here?" He finally looked at me. "Because you're living someone else's definition of success." I frowned. "What does that even mean?" Instead of answering, he handed me an old pocket watch. Its glass was cracked. The hands had stopped moving. "It doesn't work," I said. "It does. It isn't ticking. It only works when someone remembers." I had no idea what he meant. The old man stood up. "Keep it for 1 week, and then you'll understand." Before I could ask another question, he walked away. I slipped the pocket watch into my coat and drove to work. That day, something unusual happened. Every time I held the broken watch, I remembered moments I had completely forgotten. Not major events, small ones. My younger sister asking me to attend her school play. My father waiting for me at a fishing lake while I cancelled because of overtime. My best friend inviting me on a road trip that I declined. My grandmother asking me to visit before she became too weak to recognize anyone. Each memory arrived with incredible clarity. I could hear their voices, see their smiles, feel the disappointment when I never came. By evening my chest felt heavy. The watch wasn't showing me the past. It was showing me the life I had traded away. The following day things became stranger. As I walked through the city, I noticed people rushing everywhere. Everyone stared at phones. Nobody looked at the sky. Nobody noticed the musicians playing on the sidewalks. Nobody smiled. Everyone looked exactly as I felt. Busy, important, empty. At lunch, my coworker excitedly announced his promotion. Everyone applauded. But when he thought nobody was watching, he quietly wiped tears from his eyes. "You okay?" I asked. He forced a laugh. My son stopped asking if I'll come to his soccer games. His smile disappeared. He already knows the answer. That sentence stayed with me all afternoon. The pocket watch suddenly ticked once. Just once. That evening, instead of working late, I visited my parents without telling them. My mother opened the door and froze. I thought something terrible had happened. "Why?" "You never come unless there's bad news." The words hurt. We had dinner together. We laughed over stories from years ago. My father showed me photographs I had never seen because I had always been too busy. When I left, he hugged me longer than usual. "I've missed you," he whispered. The watch ticked again. The next morning, I decided to call my younger sister. She answered with surprise. "Everything all right?" "I just wanted to hear your voice." There was silence. Then she laughed. "You've never called just to talk?" We spent nearly an hour remembering childhood adventures. After hanging up, I realized I hadn't thought about work once during the conversation. The watch ticked twice. Days passed. Every meaningful conversation made the watch move. Every sincere apology repaired another tiny crack in its glass. Every moment spent fully present seemed to bring it back to life. I became obsessed with understanding it. At sunrise on the 7th day, I returned to the old clock tower. The elderly man was waiting. "You've changed," he said. "I don't understand the watch." "You don't need to." "I do?" He smiled. "No." He pointed toward the city. "What changed wasn't the watch. It was you." I looked down. The watch appeared completely restored. The glass shined. The hands moved perfectly. But it was broken. So were you? His words echoed through the quiet morning. You believe time was money. It isn't. Time is attention. Whatever receives your attention becomes your life. I stood silently. The old man continued. Money returns. Jobs change. Buildings collapse. But moments. He paused. They never come back. I looked at the watch again. I wasted years. You learned before it was too late. What if someone doesn't? He looked toward the sunrise. Most people realize it during retirement. Some realize it in a hospital. Some never realize it at all. A cold breeze swept across the hill. I blinked for only a second. When I looked back, the bench was empty. The old man had disappeared. I searched everywhere. There was no sign of him. Only a folded piece of paper rested where he had been sitting. It read, "Don't spend your life collecting achievements while losing memories." There was no signature. Months passed. I still worked hard, but I no longer worked endlessly. I attended birthdays. Family dinners became regular. I took weekend trips. I watched sunsets instead of office lights. I learned the names of my neighbors. I volunteered at a community library. For the first time in years, my calendar contained empty spaces. They no longer frightened me. They gave me room to live. One afternoon while cleaning my apartment, I searched for the pocket watch. It was gone. Every drawer, every shelf, every box. Nothing. It had disappeared without explanation. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined everything. Then my phone rang. It was my sister. She simply wanted to tell me about a funny thing her daughter had done at school. 10 months earlier, I would have ignored the call. Instead, I smiled and answered. We laughed together for 20 minutes. When the conversation ended, I looked at the wall clock. Its ticking sounded strangely familiar, like the pocket watch, like a heartbeat. Years later, after my own hair had begun turning grey, I often walked past the old clock tower. Nobody ever saw the elderly man again. The bench eventually disappeared. The tower was restored and became a tourist attraction. Children played around it every afternoon. Whenever someone asked why, I smiled whenever I passed that place. I simply replied, I learned what time is worth. They usually assumed I was talking about money. I never corrected them. Some lessons cannot be explained. They must be lived. Now, whenever someone tells me they're too busy to call their parents, visit an old friend, watch their child perform on stage, or take one day to breathe, I don't argue. I simply tell them about a cracked pocket watch that only worked when someone remembered what truly mattered. Most people smile politely and forget the story. A few grow quiet. Those are the ones who understand, because deep inside everyone owns a broken watch. Some hear it ticking. Others never notice it until the silence becomes permanent. And in the end, our lives are remembered not by the promotions we earned, the overtime we worked, or the money we collected, but by the moments we chose to share, the love we gave without expecting anything in return, and the people who smiled because we were present when they needed us most. That is the only promise truly worth keeping.